He was the greatest physical specimen that anybody has ever seen on a basketball court, and one guy had his number. One guy was David to his Goliath. One guy, Bill Russell.
I've seen Wilt get down on the floor and beat his hands on the floor, hands and knees. He was so frustrated.
When the trade was made to bring him back to Philadelphia from San Francisco, I mean, the media just went crazy.
For the first 7 years of Wilt's career, he lost to the Celtics in the playoffs 5 times, and he never won. Although he was the best individual player and broke countless records, he was the first mega superstar to get traded in the middle of his prime. No one ever denied how talented he was, but everyone questioned if he had the heart of a champion. That's when the most physically imposing player the league had ever seen had enough. In the 1966-67 season, he was out for revenge. He had the opportunity to face his arch rival and the team that traded him away in the playoffs. The sports world was shocked to see how he responded. But first, we must consider the context to truly understand the enormous pressure that he was facing. During his time with the Philadelphia/San Francisco Warriors, he accomplished everything that you could think of from an individual standpoint. Every time he stepped on the court, he was breaking some kind of record. During the 5.5 seasons with the franchise, he averaged a combined 41.5 points, 25.1 rebounds, and Lord knows how many blocks per game. He gave this team the best years of his career, but they were never able to put a title contending team around him. What's even worse is that they blamed him for not accommodating to his teammates' limited abilities. So in the middle of the 1964-65 season, he was traded to the Philadelphia 76ers. He was now in the ideal situation. He had a roster full of all-star level talent. In the eyes of the public, there was no excuse to not defeat the Boston Celtics. However, they lost to the Celtics in bitter fashion in 1965. Then, in 1966, they worked hard in the regular season to earn home court advantage for the playoffs. They had the best record in the league. But it didn't matter. They lost to the Celtics again. This time, they were defeated in 5 games. The frustrations of losing to the same team every year was starting to add up. Something needed to change. The biggest move that they made in the offseason was firing coach Dolph Schayes. He was feuding with Wilt, privately and publicly. They replaced him with Alex Hannum, who had coexisted peacefully with Wilt when they were both in San Francisco. He was the one that convinced his star center that he needed to shoot less and get his teammates involved more in the 1963-64 season. The result was that he had one of the greatest years of his storied career. In fact, that was a year where they reached the finals for the only time during Chamberlain's tenure there. Before this season began, he convinced Wilt yet again that he needed to take an even bigger sacrifice to his scoring numbers in order for his team to reach its fullest potential. There's no need for him to dominate the ball with all that talent that was surrounding him. Would the player that was being labeled as selfish be willing to sacrifice his numbers for the good of the team? He proved in a resounding way that he was more than willing to change. This was the first time in his career that he didn't average over 30 points per game and over 20 field goal attempts. This allowed him to focus more on passing and getting his teammates involved.
Never in the history of sport has a player of Wilt's magnitude been asked to change what he has done so well for so many years for the betterment of the team.
He was no longer needed to score 50 points every night in order for his team to win. He had dangerous offensive weapons that he could utilize to help cater to his strengths. There was Hal Greer, Wally Jones, and Billy Cunningham. They were solid mid-range shooters and they were very skillful around the basket. He also had the luxury of playing with Hall of Famer Chet Walker. This is the same guy that Wilt described as the greatest one-on-one scorer he's ever played for or against. He wasn't just hyping up his teammate. There have also been other players from that era that put him in the same class as Elgin Baylor and Jerry West as far as individual offensive greatness. What also made this team so special was their legendary front line. They had Luke Jackson, who for many people is considered the godfather of the power forward position. NBA legend Gail Goodrich once said that if it wasn't for injuries, he would have been a Hall of Fame player. His natural position was center, but he was able to consistently make jumpers from 15 feet out, which gave Wilt plenty of room to do his thing in the paint. He was also a tenacious rebounder, which is why many people have said that this front line is the best of any team from the pre-merger.
Philadelphia had one of the all-time great teams that year. They were physically imposing. I think Chamberlain finally had a team around him that really complimented him.
But at the center of it all, literally and figuratively speaking, was the most unstoppable force. He became even more dominant with all the scoring options that the opposing teams had to respect. Let's check out the numbers that he posted. He averaged 24.1 points on 68% shooting, 24.2 rebounds, and 7.8 assists per game. He currently has the highest field goal percentage by any player that's averaged over 20 points per game. His efficiency was truly remarkable. Over a 4-game stretch in February, he set an NBA record by making 35 consecutive shots. That included the game he had against the Baltimore Bullets when he had 42 points on 18 of 18 shooting, 30 rebounds, and 10 assists. He is the only player to score over 40 points without missing a shot. This was also only the third time that a player recorded over 40 points, 30 rebounds, and 10 assists. Overall, there were 6 games where he went perfect from the field. As great as his efficiency was, his passing was the main storyline of the season. At that point, he produced the highest assist per game average by any center. Currently, it's the 9th highest average. This was the beginning of the era where Wilt quit his obsession with breaking scoring records, and he decided to become one of the greatest all-around big men. In fact, he had a total of 22 triple-doubles. He is only one of 7 players to post over 20 triple-doubles in a season. There's no question that this was the biggest reason why the Sixers had such a legendary season. With how dominant of a scorer he was on the post, he created so many easy opportunities for his teammates. The numbers say that they took full advantage. As a team, they shot 48.3% from the field. That was easily the highest percentage for a single season up to that point. They were breaking barriers when it came to efficiency. Wilt's scoring and playmaking abilities played a major role in that. There was no other team that was close to their level. Their 68 total wins were the most by any team during that time, and it currently ranks as the 4th most in history. They started the season at 46-4, which remains the best 50-game start ever. Only the 2016 Warriors were able to match that record. After such a historic season, Wilt won his 2nd straight MVP by a landslide. He finished 5th in the league in points, 1st in rebounds, and 3rd in assists. But breaking records in the regular season was nothing new to him. It was time to validate everything that he accomplished in the playoffs. The first matchup was against Oscar Robertson and the Cincinnati Royals. He was forced to face his playoff demons in the first game. He had a monster performance. He recorded 41 points on 63% shooting, 22 rebounds, and 5 assists. But they ended up losing by 4 points. Was he going back to his old ways? Would he try to win the rest of these games by himself? He responded in the most Wilt Chamberlain way. In Game 2, he recorded a historic stat line. He had 37 points on 67% shooting, 27 rebounds, and 11 assists. This is only the 6th time that players posted a 30-20 game in the playoffs. From here on out, he was a triple-double machine. He had 7 total triple-doubles, which is tied for the 2nd most for a playoff run. There was so much more to him than just scoring. If there are any doubts to that, check out what he did in Game 3. He had 19 assists along with 16 points and 30 rebounds. That is the most assists by any non-point guard in playoff history. After taking care of the Royals, it was time for Wilt to get some payback. He was facing Bill Russell in the Boston Celtics. Let's keep in mind that Boston won 60 games that year. They even went 5-4 against Philadelphia in the regular season. Everyone was expecting a competitive series. This was when Wilt didn't just have the greatest playoff series of his career, but possibly of all time. He averaged the insane stat line of 21.6 points on 56% shooting, 32 rebounds, and 10 assists per game. If they would have counted blocks during this time, I wonder if he could have averaged a quadruple double. For example, there was an article in Sports Illustrated that mentioned that he had 6 blocks in 1 quarter. He was truly impactful in every facet of the game. The most noteworthy example came in Game 3. They were up 2-0 in the series, and he was ready to destroy their hopes of any comebacks. He had 20 points on 57% shooting, 41 rebounds, and 9 assists. Ladies and gentlemen, that is a record for the most rebounds in a playoff game, and he nearly added a triple-double to go along with it. This was the killer mentality that we was waiting to see from him. 3 of their victories were by double digits, including the 24-point beatdown in Game 5 that officially ended the Celtics' reign. After their convincing series victory, Casey Jones said this to Sports Illustrated: "They are playing the same game that we played for the last 9 years, and they've gained respect and confidence in each other." End of quote. Wilt Chamberlain finally figured it out, and he beat his arch enemy at his own game.
I can remember when they beat us in Philadelphia in the convention hall. They said, "The Celtics are dead, the Celtics are dead, the Celtics are finally dead."
Chamberlain didn't want any champagne. He said, "We have one more step to go." And then the champagne was put down, and we understood that we'll drink it, in another 10 days.
This was probably the most satisfying victory of his career, but he wasn't done with his revenge tour. In the finals, he faced a team that traded him away, the Golden State Warriors. They were able to quickly rebuild their roster after drafting Rick Barry. He took Wilt's mantle as the league's best scorer. He averaged 35.6 points per game that season. What's interesting is how much his teammates came to his defense. There was a story in Sports Illustrated where they were asking if he was too selfish. Nate Thurman, a former teammate of Chamberlain, gave an interesting answer. He said, "He gives the ball up real well. There is a great difference between Wilt scoring 40 and Rick scoring 40. End of quote. There was no love lost between these two teams. Wilt couldn't let his former squad win the title over him, and he was determined to prove how far he had come. He posted over 10 points, 30 rebounds, and 10 assists in the first 2 games. After that, Wilt was more aggressive on offense. For the next 4 games, there were 3 times that he posted over 20 points and 20 rebounds. But those words that Nate Thurman said about him was something that he didn't forget. On defense, he completely shut him down. There were 2 games where he was held to single digits while shooting less than 25% from the field. It was up to Rick Barry to carry his team. He did his part as he averaged 40.8 points per game on 40% shooting. We'll remember very well that he was in his shoes for so long, trying to do everything on offense just to help the Warriors win. But this time, he used the same approach the Celtics used on him to beat him for so many years. They used a balanced scoring attack to overwhelm Golden State. For the series, Hal Greer, Chet Walker, and Wally Jones averaged over 20 points per game. Wilt focused on doing the rest. He averaged 17.7 points on 56% shooting, 20.5 rebounds, and 6.8 assists per game. He showed a perfect blend of scoring, facilitating easy shots for others, and being the ultimate defensive anchor. When it was all said and done, he won the first title of his career. It was the perfect end to what many consider as the greatest individual season ever. But that's not the only legacy he left. When the NBA commemorated its 35th anniversary in 1980, they selected the 1967 Sixers as the greatest individual team. In other words, league experts were calling this team the greatest of the pre-modern era. How ironic that the player that was being criticized for not being a winner is the face of one of the greatest teams ever. With all the individual records he holds, that might be his most impressive. But what about you all? How do you view Wilt's 1967 season? Should it be considered the greatest single season ever? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.